Hello, this is Deaf to Falls Music after a long hiatus, coming back at you with a new album review of the Black Keys' new album. I have it right here, El Camino. Now, in case anybody doesn't know this, I love the Black Keys. They're one of my all-time favorite rock and roll bands, and they're one of the biggest inspirations on me as a musician. They've introduced me to the works of Junior Kimbrough and T. Model Ford and R.L. Burnside, the whole Mississippi hill country style. Although lately they haven't really been doing the whole hill country blues. They haven't done it for quite some time. But before I get into this album, I want to try to backtrack and talk about the early part of the 2000s, because I feel that this album should be taken into context, much like everything else. Back in 2000, 2001, or 2002, those areas, there was a big explosion of rock bands that were seemingly retro that came out. You had the Strokes, you had the Vines, you had the Hives, you had the White Stripes, and of course you had the Black Keys. And all these bands kind of based their sound on old garage rock, 60s garage rock. Sometimes there was a little post-punk into them. The Strokes were definitely post-punk. And they were firmly rooted in 60s and 70s rock and roll, mainly late 60s, early 70s rock and roll. And a lot of these bands have kind of blown up. The years have not really been kind to most of these bands. You had the Vines, which kind of went into a breakdown after their first album. Then you had the Hives, which never really took off past their hit when they started. I forget what it's called. And then you had the Strokes, which almost blew up in their 2006 album, and made a new album this year, which has not really been kind to critics. I think it was called Angles. And then you had the White Stripes, which basically was Meg White going berserk, having horrible anxiety, and the band breaking up. The years have not really been kind to a lot of these bands, but I didn't really think that the Black Keys would be the sole survivors of this movement and get as big as they are today. When I first heard the Black Keys back in 2002, 2003, I thought they were a damn good blues rock band, putting their own dirty take on a tried and true genre. And they did different kind of things. You know, they experimented with hill country blues styles, and just kind of an older take, and an older, spookier take on the blues. It was fresh, and it was much needed in the wake of all these Chicago style modern, clean blues. I really enjoyed it. And then they kept on going. They made their second album, Thick Freakness. They recorded their third album in a band at Tire Factory, and they called it Rubber Factory. They did really well in critics' polls, and they evolved really slowly. I mean, listen to Have Love Will Travel, and then listen to anything off Brothers, and you'll hear the progression. You'll hear the evolution of the sound. And of course, they got their music in a shit ton of ads. Victoria's Secret, American Express, Subaru. And they actually went on Colbert Report and clowned about their capitalism. And then of course they broken through at that point. Last year's Brothers, 2010's Brothers, won a shit ton of Grammys. Had a minor hit with the song Tighten Up, which had this kind of T-Rex down sound to it, especially in songs like Howling for You. And now we have El Camino, which came out just a few weeks ago. Their 7th album. And like every band with 7 albums, it's going to be a weird crossroads in their band. And it's not going to sound exactly the same as they were when they started. Look at Radiohead, for example. They've only had about 7 albums, I believe, 7 or 8. And the King of Limbs sounds nothing like Pablo Honey. It just doesn't. Sorry. So now we have this album, El Camino, and it's probably the most party-rific, stomping album that the band has ever released. For all those people who really love Thick Freakness and Rubber Factory, you probably will be disappointed by this release. There's really no subtle, spooky, raw blues sound on this record. Instead, we have a glam rock, kind of a glam, nasty release, very influenced by T-Rex. I'm getting a lot of Mark Bolan atmosphere from this album. And it's just fun. It's a lot shorter than Brothers. It's a lot faster. there's a lot more soul to it than Brothers. Brothers had a lot of soul to it, but it was also kind of wired in this kind of down feeling. There's a lot of slow songs that didn't quite grab at you. It was a slow burning album. It was 55 minutes too. It was the longest Black Keys album. This album is only about 38 minutes. It's a standard length for a Black Keys release. All the songs are pretty fast. All the songs are really catchy, and it's probably the most accessible thing the Black Keys have done. Now, let's talk about the music. Lonely Boy is just a scorching rock song. There's really no blues sound on this. This is just straight ahead rock and roll. And that's pretty much where this album is. They're really not a blues rock band anymore. It's just straight ahead rock. Glam, rock, it has this kind of glam feel to it, like, mid-70s era T-Rex. But if you really want to boil it down, it's just a rock album. Gold on the Ceiling is probably my favorite song on the album. It just has this filthy sound. It's almost like a George Thorogood thing, or it actually kind of much like Everlasting Light reminded me of Mambo Sun. This reminds me of much of Electric Warrior. And then there's a song called Money Maker, which is probably going to be played in strip clubs. So, and the lyrics are absolutely hilarious. Auerbach was kind of ignoring the cliches of the earlier albums, and just kind of going for just straightforward, simple lyrics. He actually made up a lot of them on the album. My favorite one is "Finest Exterior, She's So Superior," which is just fantastic. But there are a few little surprises on this album. For instance, "Little Black Submarines" is kind of a nice little acoustic ballad, which then goes into almost Mary Jane's Last Dance rock section. I just picture Tom Petty coming in and crooning about some girl. And a lot of these songs are just fun, danceable rock songs with irresistible hooks, and they really can't put too much thought behind it. And I don't think they even put too much thought behind it. It's certainly not my favorite Black Keys release, but it's not that bad. A lot of people are kind of bad-mouthing it, saying, "Oh, it's not Thick Freakness and it's not Rubber Factory." Of course it's not. It's their 7th album. It's El Camino. It's just a good, fast rock and roll album. Don't criticize it too much. Don't analyze it too much. Just have fun with it. Play it. Get drunk. Dance around. Have fun. But in the meantime, as far as favorite Black Keys albums, I will still be spinning Thick Freakness and Rubber Factory. I was kind of hoping that the band would go back into more of a bluesier area, but I don't think that's really going to be happening from this point on. So a lot of the older fans are probably going to be disappointed. But, so what? Fuck them. Anyway, this is Deaf to False Music. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. Not the best Black Keys album, but you want to know something? Not bad either. This is Deaf to False Music. Hope you enjoyed this review. Sorry it was a bit long, and have a nice day.